Welcome to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. I'm Dr. Daniel Amen.
And I'm Tana Amen. Here we teach you how to win the fight for your brain to defeat anxiety, depression, memory loss, ADHD, and addictions.
The Brain Warriors Way podcast is brought to you by Amen Clinics, where we've transformed lives for 3 decades using brain SPECT imaging to better target treatment and natural ways to heal the brain. For more information, visit amenclinics.com.
The Brain Warriors Way podcast is also brought to you by BrainMD, where we produce the highest quality nutraceutical products to support the health of your brain and body. For more information, visit brainmdhealth.com. Welcome to the Brain Warriors Way podcast.
Well, welcome to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. We are so excited to have our new friend, Thomas Bilyeu, who I got to meet at the big success event in Dallas. Tom is the co-founder of Quest Nutrition, a company that is now valued over $1 billion. I see Quest bars everywhere. I help to support that company by the cases of Quest bars that I have eaten over the years. He's also the co-founder and the host of Impact Theory, which Tom will tell us about. Tom's mission is the creation of empowering media-based intellectual property and the acceleration of mission-based businesses. I mean, clearly, Amen Clinics and the Brain Warriors Way are mission-based. No question. Personally, he's driven to help people develop the skills they need to improve themselves in the world, and he is a forever student. And Tom, we just couldn't be more excited to have you on the Brain Warriors Way podcast.
Thank you, guys. I am excited to be here, and I certainly had the good fortune of telling Dr. Amen this in person, but you have had a massive impact on me, and it all started with Making a Good Brain Great. I am obsessed with the brain and reading that book, and I've since read multiple others of your books as well, but that one really kicked it off for me, and the whole notion of automatic negative thoughts and really has been a very powerful notion in my life. So I am truly honored to be here today.
So we're going to break this into 3 episodes. So the first one, I want our audience to get to know who you are and your journey to health, because I think anytime they hear about someone's journey to health, there are takeaways for them. And then the next one, we're going to talk about ants and how to squash the automatic negative thoughts, which is just, it's a critical life skill. And then we're going to talk about how mindset can change your life and business. So tell us your journey to health. As I watched you at Success Magazine, it was just fascinating. So tell people a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So I grew up in a morbidly obese family, and that was, honestly, it was invisible to me. I really took it for granted. I didn't think much about it. It's the whole concept of David Foster Wallace, this is water. For me, that was water. And eating a horrific diet was just part of how I grew up. And so I loved the food, so I didn't really think anything about it. And I was always a little bit chubby as a kid, but, compared to a lot of people in my family, very much got off light, not because I was making better choices. I just, got lucky. And wasn't until later that I really started to think about, from a diet perspective, the implications, because I saw so many people in my family struggle. And when I was about 12 years old, I had an uncle that died of complications from his diet. And that was very, very sad. And seeing somebody who's a shut-in and who doesn't leave the house and who really can't get around and just have sort of a high-functioning, normal life was very sad and left a lasting mark on me. And that was something that I thought a lot about. And then as I got older and saw my mom and my sister really struggling profoundly with depression, and that was the big thing. And, especially my sister, to watch her go from this vibrant, just amazing human being to really sort of closing in on herself and not being happy, not having the joy in her life. And I just really became obsessed with the notion of what would it take to help her be happy. And I started going on my own weight loss journey when I went to college, where most people put on the freshman 15. I lost like the freshman 35.
Wow.
And was just, I was just really obsessed with doing well at college. Like, it was the first time in my life where I was doing exactly what I wanted to be doing. I was taking a lot of student loans and was really just obsessed with getting the most out of college. And that I didn't try to make any better choices, unfortunately, but just found myself in a position where I was working a lot. And then I was poor. So I didn't have access to snacks and soda and things that I had growing up. And so in that sort of accidental lifestyle change, really saw a big transformation in my physique. And I happened to bump into a girl that hadn't seen me in several years. And she was sort of taken aback and said, wow, it's crazy. I always thought of you as the chubby kid. And that was like this moment where my life sort of got knocked sideways. And I like sort of re-envisioned my whole childhood, because compared to my family, I was in such better shape that I'd never really thought of myself like that. So it was this really eye-opening moment. And growing up as a kid, I always knew that there were two things that would ultimately be true about my life. And that's, one day I would be rich, and one day I would have six-pack abs. And I had no idea how I was going to accomplish either thing. But those were two things that I was really interested in making come true in my life. And so, to cut a long story short, I start working out and start taking my health seriously, and don't really understand at this point much about nutrition, don't know who to listen to. And I'm sort of fumbling my way through things. And I remember my roommate at the time, his girlfriend, because I was eating red vine licorice because it was fat-free. And I remember her saying, well, I think, though, if you eat too much sugar, that it can actually become fat. And I thought, that doesn't even make sense. Like, how on earth would sugar become fat? Like, they're totally separate things. And so that shows you where I started, and end up meeting these two guys who become my co-founders at Quest Nutrition ultimately. But this was about a decade before that. And they were in great shape, really understood nutrition, understood human metabolism, and really became my first mentors with that, with working out. And that began a big journey there. And then at the same time, I really felt powerless in my life and didn't know how to get control of what I wanted. You know, if I was going to make myself wealthy, the only thing I knew was there was something standing between me and that. And I began to really understand mindset, and that, and really beginning to struggle quite profoundly with anxiety, led me to studying the brain relentlessly, reading as much as I could, discovering your work, Dr. Amen, which was very influential, especially in the early days of really just trying to grasp what the brain is and how it impacts us, and how I should be thinking about it, and protecting it like an organ. And, you know, I mean, just like all the things that you really teach, I had to learn, and was, you know, I was starting from ground zero, and didn't understand just how much the brain controlled us. And for me, it really was the movie The Matrix that gave me the metaphor that I needed to understand to really understand the way that the brain was creating my entire reality. And once I had that concept of the Matrix, which in the movie is, you know, essentially a virtual world that we're stuck in and don't realize it, but taking that as a metaphor for, that's the brain, and the brain is constructing this world. You know, it's in total darkness, total silence, and yet it creates this very believable representation of the world around me. But ultimately, it's a representation. And so once I understood that it was this construct, and I needed to really understand it. I needed to understand the way the brain worked, that it may have my best interest at heart, but it wasn't always telling me the truth, and that I needed to really dive into that and learn, that I really just started reading obsessively about the brain, and beginning to formulate an understanding of that. And then that really led to the biggest gains, both physically and mentally, from a health perspective for me, was understanding the brain. And so that's become the root of all of my success, which I will credit really to reading, and just understanding the way the brain functions. That's really my story of my path to health.
Well, wow, I applaud you, because you look really young. When you said they were your partners, but not till a decade later, I'm like, because you look really young. So that's impressive,
Wow,
right
thank
there.
you.
But I'm curious. So you talked about your sister and your mother. Has your lifestyle changed? You said you wanted to impact your sister and her depression. Did it? Did you have an impact on your family?
Yeah, I'm very proud to say that my sister, since we launched Quest, has lost over 120 pounds.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's been such a beautiful and amazing transformation. But as you guys know, the real transformation has been psychologically.
Yeah.
Like just seeing her get into a virtuous cycle with food, to start to feel better about herself, to realize she's in control of her life, to see her start going to the gym and eating better and really taking care of herself. And the way that makes you then feel optimistic, and you feel better and your brain is functioning better. And that in turn makes you happier, and you start making better choices. I mean, it really is just an entire all-encompassing virtuous cycle. And my sister owns that transformation. That is her. And she was the one that really gave me the words, when I said, like, how did this all happen for you? And she said, you guys were the first ones that really let me move towards something. You gave me food that I wanted to eat instead of just telling me to eat less and exercise more. And that was like the big win for her. So her thing was, she loved M&Ms, and eating M&Ms just put her in a great mood. And I mean, food is a powerful drug.
Right.
And so for her, it was swapping that out with something that tasted like cookie dough, which was one of our early bars that for her was just a big deal. And so she said, now I have this thing, I want to eat it. I'm excited. It tastes delicious. And I eat that instead of my M&Ms. And then that turns into, you get those early wins, you start losing weight, and then you just start making more and better choices until, it's 120 pounds later. And
so I want to go back to something you said, that being obese in your family was like water, that it really wasn't anything that sort of stood out as a problem. And as you said that, I just think about what's happening in our society.
It's the norm.
That with 2/3 of us overweight, almost 40% obese, that it's becoming the norm, and people aren't upset about it. I have this great story of one of our best friends, Mark Laser, who was diabetic, overweight, and when I watched him order chicken fried steak with mashed potatoes and gravy at dinner, we were at a conference together. I asked him how tall he was, 6 feet. I asked him how much he weighed, 244 pounds. I calculated his BMI, it was 33. Normal is between 18.5 and 25. Over 30 is obese. And I'm like, dude, you're obese. And he said, Daniel, you're so cold. And I said, not nearly as cold as you're going to be when you're 6 feet under. Wow. And it shocked him. And the next month he lost 10 pounds. Wow. And the next 2 years he lost 53 pounds. And he cut his insulin dosage in half. But so much of our world is living in this
fog,
toxic level of denial that is literally damaging the health of our society.
And you said one more thing that I really, really want to highlight, because it's a big philosophy for us in helping people get well. And I love what you said. So we tell people there is no suffering in getting healthy. It's about abundance, but you have to replace, not erase. The human brain is not designed to enjoy deprivation. So what you did with your sister was brilliant, right? So she had to replace those M&Ms with something else. You can't just cut stuff out. You've got to replace it with something healthy. That's what I do. I help people replace the things that they're removing with something that they will enjoy equally or more, and that's going to make them healthy. So what you did was perfect, and that was just brilliant. So I love that.
Yeah, that's it. That really is the strategy. And the whole idea behind Quest was, okay, our goal is to end metabolic disease. You can't tell people, not en masse. I mean, just like what you're saying, you can't tell them to eat less and exercise more.
It doesn't work.
You really got to, exactly.
Everyone knows that. No one's doing it.
It's crazy, right? So that was our whole thing, was we want to make food that people can choose based on taste, and it happens to be good for them. And that's really the only way forward, because we know that people are going to eat for pleasure more than they're going to eat for sustenance.
Yep.
So address that, like be honest about that, be real about it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way the whole food industry has to go.
No question. That's why in the cookbook I just wrote, there's blueberry muffins, there's brownies, but they're grain-free, dairy-free, gluten-free, and they actually taste good, and they're sugar-free, and they taste good. People don't know it's possible. You have to show them, we all have a gift. Your gift like my gift is to help. You were able to show people the possibility, and that's amazing. I applaud you for that. That's just awesome.
What the growth was like incredible. I mean, it was astronomical. Talk about that and how you manage the stress in your own life
that's crazy.
that goes with that kind of growth.
And how you still look young and don't have gray hair. That's pretty amazing.
Well, the gray hair is, let me tell you, I have no interest in growing old gracefully, so I dye the life out of my hair. So we'll just
okay,
start
me
with that
too.
full
So
disclosure.
obviously.
So my thing is that, so the growth was crazy, and it was 57,000% in our first 3 years alone, even more if you carried out 4 and 5 years. Just absolutely bonkers. And it really came down to a couple things. One, the product was real and it worked. And that's obviously a huge deal. And then two, we understood social media really before anybody else. So back in this, we started thinking about the company in 2009. Everybody was saying that Facebook was just a distraction. How's this ever going to be valuable to a business? And we just understood, look, this is about community building. This is about people now have a megaphone and they can say something positive or negative about you within minutes of an interaction with your company and to a global audience. And so we understood the power in that. And we just so wanted to deliver value because we had spent such a long time really just focused on getting rich, making money, building a product that was fine, but it was wasn't a passion. And I got so fed up with that I literally went into my partners and I quit. And I said, look, I cannot do this anymore. I need to live a life where I feel alive. I need to be passionate. I need to be helping people. I want to be driven by value. I want every day to be about coming in and trying to deliver value to somebody's life. That's just how I'm wired. That will feel good. I can get excited about that. And so they said, you know what, we actually feel the same. And so we agreed that we would sell the company and that we would start something new that was predicated entirely around building value, building community, doing something great for people. And really having a big mission, the whole notion of ending metabolic disease, we understood, that was a huge thing. And we thought it would take us about 25 years, just a really, really big mission. But if we could wake up every day and come into work doing that, we would love it, even if we were failing. And that concept of doing what you love, even if you're failing, was so important and was so transformational for us that really changed everything. And if you guys know Simon Sinek and his book Start With Why, that whole concept is just so powerful to me that once you know why you're doing what you're doing, to your point about stress, all of a sudden that becomes easy. You can deal with that. And I'm sure you guys have read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
And that's if you can survive a concentration camp by knowing why you're fighting, by knowing exactly what it is that you want to make come true, you can do anything. So to be honest, I didn't feel a high degree of stress. Quest was a lot of work, and it was just an overwhelming amount of hours that we had to put into it. But I was thinking every day about my mom and my sister. And I was thinking about all the people that struggle like they struggle. And it was so real to me. And it was people that I knew and loved and didn't want to lose, that, you show up and you're putting that effort in and you feel wow, I'm really bringing value. And people are leaving comments oh my gosh, you've changed my life. And they're submitting these, transformations. My sister's transformation was one of thousands of people that wrote in and said, I've lost 100 pounds or 150 pounds. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So it gets really easy to fight through the hard times when you know what you're fighting for.
Well, your passion it's infectious. It's really cool. It's fun to see that. That's awesome.
We are so excited. Well, we are going to stay with Tom. And on the next podcast, we're going to talk about how to squash the automatic negative thoughts and how important that is been in his life, but it's a critical skill you need in your life as well. Stay with us.
So we are back with our friend Tom Bilyeu. Hopefully you heard the first podcast. He is one of the co-founders of Quest Nutrition Bars, and his story is just amazing. So today we're going to be talking about how he killed his ants, his automatic negative thoughts, and how important that was in his life. So you had the chance to actually meet Tom and have dinner with him. So
I did, and it was so cool for me. In the last podcast, we talked about purpose and why, and he came up to me at dinner. We were both speaking together at the success event in Dallas, and he told me how important my work had been to him, especially about killing the ants. So welcome back, and let's talk about ants and how they can infest people's lives.
Yeah, so that the first book of yours that I got a hold of was Making a Good Brain Great, which, by the way, that title was so enticing to me. I thought, okay, I've got to read this. And diving into that book, just really from beginning to end, was incredibly powerful. And it was at a point where I was really trying to understand the brain and understand like how it was essentially manifesting my entire reality. And as I began to realize just how important the brain is, and that we're really like our lives are a reflection of the health of our brain, and then getting to that concept of automatic negative thoughts, it was like that lightning bolt moment where you realize my entire life is about that. Like I spend so much time in a negative dialogue with myself, right, but never really thought to immediately kill those thoughts. And the problem is with automatic negative thoughts, they feel real. Like my brain wants to believe them. My brain wants to go, yeah, this negative thing about you, this is really true. And because it's true, you should indulge it. And so those voices, that concept of all the things that you're doing wrong, all the ways in which you're bad, all the ways in which you're not good enough, it felt weird to try to silence that, because it felt like then I was lying to myself, and I wasn't like accepting like how bad I was and, you know, all the things that I was bad at. So you really gave me permission to go, wait a second, this is counterproductive. Like, even if it is real, that's almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
Is it moving you towards your goals or not? Like, is it actually helping you build a better life? Is it helping you lower your anxiety? Is it helping you, be more optimistic and feel better about your life, to shake off any residue of depression or anything like that? And for me, my real struggle was anxiety. Yeah. And I just found that the anxiety was building and building and building. And it was like, I began to understand enough about, neurons that fire together, wire together, to know like the more I indulge this negative cycle, the more that I indulge in a vision of a future that hasn't happened yet, by the way, but I'm painting it as if it were completely real and entirely negative, and it's making me really anxious. Like, the more that I was doing that, the more concrete it was becoming, the bigger my anxiety response was becoming, the faster it was coming. And I just thought, whoa, this concept of automatic negative thoughts is so critical, because if I can catch it early, if I can kill those, if I can get myself into a positive dialogue, imagining a positive future, that I can replace literally the neurological wiring that's creating this anxiety with something positive that makes me feel calm, it makes me feel confident, that I could really begin to reverse this process.
So I love what you're saying. And it is, I'm also very anxious. I'm also I'm hardwired to be a little intense. I'm a neurosurgical ICU nurse, and we're slightly intense people. So
don't forget the red hair.
Yeah. So it's just sort of in my DNA. But you've really helped me with that. I mean, really helped me. When we first met, you helped me get this skill set of questioning my thoughts and going through the entire process. But I've also come up with and it's actually a question I got from you, but I love it, and I've planted it so deeply in my life. It's sort of a shortcut, because I'm a really busy person. So now that I sort of have the skill set down and I've got this concept, I will ask myself this question when I'm really upset about something. I'll get upset really quickly, and then it's like, does this have eternal value? And it's nice. Somehow it just reframes it for me. I've had cancer. So if it's not cancer, it's like, really, does it have eternal value? And so, we came home from a vacation because we were having construction done on our house. We walk in and they put the wrong floor in. And I mean, most people would flip out, right? So I was upset for, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then you just slip right into that. Does this have eternal value? What difference does it really make? It's going to get fixed. So what? I mean, and I've done that with crashing my computer or whatever, but that shortcut of, does it have eternal value? It's not cancer. My kid is healthy. It's, you know what I mean? Like, it's, that shortcut of getting yourself there quickly. It's really helpful.
So I've learned as a psychiatrist that most people are their own worst enemy. There's a Ziggy cartoon. We have met the enemy and he is us.
Right.
And it comes often from an undisciplined mind.
Right.
where there's nowhere in school. I mean, I had to take English 12 times to get through high school. I mean, every year it's English and every year it's math. And I love Paul Simon's song Kodachrome, which starts, when I think back on all the crap I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all. Where one of the most important skills is how to manage your mind.
Right.
Because, whether you believe you evolved or you were made, it was an anxious time back then when you had to worry about the tiger or the lions or whoever wanted to eat you. And so we are wired for negativity. We're wired to pay attention for fear, but now it's different. And yes, there are things you want to be cautious about, but
most of it's not real, and we worry about things that really don't matter.
And you need to discipline your mind like you discipline your body. I mean, that's how you got those abs. It's you disciplined what you ate, you disciplined how you exercised, and there's so few people that actually bring it to their mind to learn how to not believe every stupid thought you have, how when you feel sad, mad, nervous, or out of control, write down what you're thinking and just question it. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but just the act of writing it down helps to get it out of your head. The example I often give is, if I get the thought, Tana never listens to me, and I've had that thought. And then if I write it down, I realize, well, how stupid the thought is. Because, maybe she's not listening to me today because she's distracted or something's going on with her daughter or they put the wrong floor in. But when I write words like always or never, every time, not telling myself the truth. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love the New Testament verse, John 8:32, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And the truth is, sometimes she doesn't listen to me, and sometimes I don't listen to her because I'm busy.
See, I like the turnaround. Right. I love the opposite when you turn it to its opposite. That person is so irritating. I'm irritating. Well, that's true a lot. So, it just instantly sort of deflates that balloon.
Right. So there's a technology to killing the ants or to getting rid of the automatic negative thoughts. Write it down. See if you can identify what type of distortion. So in Making a Good Brain Great or Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, I talk about there are 10 different types of ants. And anxiety, people with anxiety like me, Tana, probably with you, we're just masterful at fortune-telling ants, where we're predicting the worst and then we're making it worse. I tell the only people really should be predicting the worst are contract lawyers, right? Your contract lawyer should predict the worst and should protect you from that. But doing it moment by moment in your life triggers panic attacks.
So I have a question. How important was this skill set in helping you in your success? You're incredibly successful. So how important was that for you?
Yeah, incredibly. So I'll credit my success entirely to what I've been able to do with my brain. So I'll often shorthand that to reading, but what I mean by that is, really getting the knowledge that I need to go out and execute. And at the end of the day, anybody's success comes down to the ability to execute. So you have to at some point get out of the thinking mode and really go do something. And a big part of it for me was having to come to understand that I could learn anything I needed to learn. And that was a big deal for me. And so instead of being trapped by insecurity and that, you're never going to be good enough, you don't know this, you're not as good as them, all the things that the ants were telling me, I really had to get control of that so that I could put myself on a path to mastery. And at the end of the day, you're only going to go as far as you believe you can go. And that was a huge breakthrough for me to realize that the human animal leads with belief. And so if you believe you can do it, then you'll actually be able to do it for no other reason than you'll take the steps to actually acquire the skills, right? So we are an adaptation machine. It is what humans do. We learn, we get better. We can go into a novel environment and figure it out. And we figure it out through trial and error. You don't walk in and just know or be great at it. I mean, even Einstein wasn't born knowing physics. Maybe he was born with an unusual curiosity for physics. Maybe he could grasp it faster than other people. But at the same time, he still had to go in and learn it. So that is true for all of us. But most people don't believe that they can actually learn whatever that thing is. So getting control of my automatic negative thoughts, flipping it, realizing that I could learn anything I put my mind to, I was going to have to put the work in. But in doing that, then I became a skill acquisition machine. And that really is what my success rests on top of.
Say more about that. A skill acquisition machine. I love that.
Yeah,
that's
so
good.
there's people often say that what Darwin said was it's the survival of the fittest, but he didn't actually say that. Somebody else has said it like 100 years after his death. What he said was, it isn't the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but rather the most adaptive to change. And when I think about how humans have become the apex predator, it really is because we are the most adaptive. There's no other animal that you'll find in as many regions on the planet. I mean, there was a point at one point where James Cameron, the film director, was at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. Okay, so everywhere from, the Arctic to the bottom of the ocean. I mean, it's literally crazy how we're able to adapt to our environment, create technologies, and that is the supreme human gift, is our ability to adapt. Now, the problem is we can adapt to the negative, and that's where I think anxiety comes from. You become so obsessive, and all the machinations of myelination kick in, and you literally wire your brain to become anxious, to become prone to panic. Like, you've trained your brain to do that. But the fact that we can take conscious control of those processes and through disciplined practice really force ourselves to go in an opposite, more productive direction is our great gift. And I just don't think enough people really understand that you can acquire any skill you want if you're willing to put in the work. Yep. Now, there are some people that they're going to get an early win in things that other people wouldn't. Some people don't struggle with something that somebody else will. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you may have to work a little harder than the person next to you on that particular skill.
Yeah.
But you can acquire them.
My friend Jacob has cerebral palsy. I love using him as an example. He has a cerebral palsy, slurred speech, very difficult time verbalizing. He's in a wheelchair with spasticity, and he's getting his black belt. So whenever someone tells me they can't do something, I just, I think of Jacob, and I like to show Jacob's picture. And I'm like, tell me again why you can't do it, because I'm having a hard time understanding. So it's pretty amazing.
So the ants really limit us from having great relationships, from being successful at work, even from managing our health. I think people who struggle to lose weight or overcome their health challenges, it's often because of the limiting belief they have, along with some particularly toxic thoughts like everything in moderation, which I often say is the gateway thought to hell. It's generally your excuse to do the wrong thing that will hurt yourself. This is so important. When we come back, we are going to talk about mindset. I mean, we're really talking about mindset now, but we're really going to explore it and how mindset can change your life and your business. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. We're here with Thomas Bilyeu. So much fun. Tom is the co-founder of Quest Nutrition. He's also the co-founder and host of Impact Theory, where he's really building a brand new media company. And we are so excited to have him and hear his story.
Yeah, it's so as I've been listening to you, Tom, it's very apparent to me. So, and I've always said this, there are people, like, I love to watch people. I love to copy people. I know, it's like you see, like, I love what Tony Robbins always says, success leaves clues. So you just watch people and what are they doing that makes them so successful? Well, it's very clear to me. you do something different. Your entire energy is very different than just the average person that you see that's comfortable with where they're at. You're not comfortable with with the way things are. It's very clear to me. So I love talking to you about killing the ants, your mindset, your obsession with being a better person, with constantly improving. So this is going to be a good one. We're going to talk about mindset today, and how it affects your business. So it seems to me like you've been interested in that topic for a very long time.
Yeah. I've been full blown into mindset for probably about 20 years now.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously worked. There's something going on.
So talk to us about the biggest lessons you have learned.
So that's easy. There's one lesson that really rides above everything else, which Carol Dweck summed up in her amazing book. I so wish I had had this book when I was coming up, but the book Mindset, and the whole notion of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is, to me, the fundamental lesson everybody has to learn. And a fixed mindset is somebody who believes that their talent and intelligence are fixed. It's what you were born with. It's what it's always going to be. There's nothing you can do to develop it. So life is really about putting yourself in a situation where you can shine. So if there are people that are smarter than you, then you go down a rung until you get to the point where you feel good about yourself relative to the people that are around you, which causes people's worlds to sort of collapse in on itself, to always becoming smaller. And that's it. But they need to do something to feel good about themselves. And then people with a growth mindset realize that their talents and intelligence are not fixed, that they're malleable, that they can be grown and developed through disciplined practice, that you're gonna have to put in the work, but that you really can change and grow. And people understand that about their bodies. Like, people get, if I eat right, if I exercise, if I go to the gym, if I move a lot of weight, that I can literally transform my physique and become capable of something tomorrow that I'm not capable of today. And people totally buy into that physically. They've seen that transformation so many times, whether it's somebody losing fat or somebody becoming a bodybuilder, I mean, whatever the case may be, they get it. But when it comes to the mind, because it's invisible, because it's all hidden inside that skull, people don't have that same sense of it's possible. And because they don't have the sense of it's possible, they don't set out on that quest. They don't actually take the first step. You know, we said in one of our earlier podcasts that transformation, it really starts with belief. Humans lead with belief. And until you have that belief that you can do it, that you can make those changes, you're never going to go anywhere. And then the other really big breakthrough for me was understanding that you can choose what you build your self-esteem around. And that was a big breakthrough moment for me. And what was happening was I had a fixed mindset, and I had a goal that I wanted to become wealthy. It's no longer my goal. I don't really think like that anymore. But at the time, that was like my obsession. I wanted to become wealthy. And I was working with these two guys, and they were 10 years ahead of me as entrepreneurs. They were much smarter than me. And I'll define intelligence as the ability to process raw data rapidly. So they could just process raw data rapidly, faster than I could. I valued that so much. It made me feel small. And I found myself wanting to win arguments with them because they made me feel stupid. And because I built my self-esteem around being smart and being right, being wrong often and not feeling as smart as them was really detrimental to my self-esteem. So I got into this weird habit of arguing for an idea just because it was mine. And there was a time one day, I remember so clearly, where the idea that I was arguing for, which was mine, was worse. And I knew it was worse. And there was a voice in my head that was screaming, like, stop arguing for this idea. It's counterproductive for the business. And I just couldn't help it. I keep pushing, and I actually win the argument. And then I found myself in this moment of terror where I'm like, wait a second. I wanted to win the argument because it feels good to be right. Even though I know I'm wrong, them telling me that I'm right feels good. But now I've just moved the business in the wrong direction. So if my goal is to actually become wealthy, what am I doing? Because I'm moving away from that goal, and I'm moving towards just feeling good about myself. So if my goal is to feel good about myself, then just own it and go do that. Get out of this situation because it routinely makes me feel badly about myself. Or admit that you really do want to create wealth, and thusly you need to listen. When an idea is better than yours, you need to gravitate towards it. And at that moment, I realized I'm never going to be able to be long-term in a situation where I don't feel good about myself. So I need to feel good about myself. But maybe there's another way. And that other way would be to build my self-esteem around something that, and I didn't have this word back then, but I got this word from Nassim Taleb, who wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. So to build my self-esteem around something that's anti-fragile. Now, something that's resilient or tough is still defined by its breaking point. So that's not anti-fragile. Anti-fragile is something that the more you attack it, the stronger it becomes. So what if I could build my self-esteem around something that was truly anti-fragile? So I thought, instead of valuing myself for being smart, which is very fragile, because sometimes you'll be the smartest person in the room, sometimes you'll be the dumbest person in the room. And instead of valuing myself for being right, because sometimes you're going to be right, sometimes you're going to be wrong, I'm going to instead value myself for being the learner and for identifying the right answer faster than anyone else, because that isn't anti-fragile. So you could tell me that I'm stupid. You could attack me, say that was so dumb, what a terrible idea. And if you're right, then I get to value myself for recognizing, oh my gosh, that's actually right. That actually is the better idea. That's going to move us towards what we want. And now I get to feel proud about that. I get to be happy. I get to feel good about myself because I recognize I'm not going to let my ego get in the way. That answer actually is the right answer. We're going to follow that. We're going to do that. I'm going to put a lot of energy and enthusiasm behind that idea. And then I'm going to be proud of myself for going out and learning more about the topic, of knowing that, hey, I'm wrong now, but that's just an opportunity to be right tomorrow, and that I can go learn more now that my eyes are open. And that shift changed everything in my life.
That is so interesting. I love what you said, the anti-fragile concept. I've never heard that term. But again, the thing that comes to my mind, and I just love it, what you said, because it's so true. People build we talk a lot to our daughter about this idea of building your self-esteem on something. I never knew that concept, but building it on something that is, again, it doesn't have eternal value. So for me, it's like, I don't build it on something that doesn't have eternal value, which for me, I build it on learning and contribution and what I consider to be eternal value, which is, a spiritual belief for me. So those are things no one can take away. Those are things that, right, wrong, or indifferent, they're something that are deeply rooted, and it has nothing to do with money or anything else that someone can take from you. And that's what we try to help her understand as well. Your worth, your self-worth, your value is not based on how you perform today. It's not,
Although as I'm listening to it and thinking about some of the principles of success, is you are partnering with people you perceived as smarter than you. So that's always a good thing, is you always want to hang out with people who stretch you.
Yeah, I like being the dumbest person in the room.
For example, I play table tennis at a really high level, but I try to always play with people who are better than me, because that's the only way I'm going to get better. But you also recognize the toxic thought of, I have to be right, even though knowing you were wrong, which is death to a relationship, or it's death to a business. But being able to step back and learn from that is critical. I can't tell you the number of relationships that just blow apart because somebody has to be right, rather than really learning what the other people need or what the business needs. That it's our biggest successes actually are on the stones of our failures that we've learned, okay, well, we're not going to do that again. So this is, and I love the anti-fragile.
I do too. I love that concept.
The term I would use for it is called hormetic, which is, it's almost like you get something that's not good for you, but actually makes you stronger.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
I remember arguing one time with my mom when I was really young, and my mom wasn't a formally educated person, but she's very wise. And she said to me one time when I was really young, and it always stuck with me, you can be right, but sometimes you can be dead right. And I was like, whoa, that was it was just a really intense phrase, but I'm like, what's the point of being right if it kills what's valuable in your life? And it just always stuck with me.
But it's a self-esteem thing. I totally understand it. It's I'm as good or better than someone else. And then when you step back from it, you realize how toxic that can be to the relationship, to the business, and so on. So helpful. What else comes up in your mind as you're thinking about the stair steps to your success?
Really then taking that notion of being a learner to the next level and executing against it. And I'll go back to the Matrix again, and watching that movie really made me think through, like, so in the movie, basically the guy wakes up in the real world and realizes that what he thought was a real world is really just a construct. It's the Matrix. And if that metaphor holds true for the brain, and that my brain has essentially made the Matrix for me, maybe with the best of intentions, but not everything is very useful or helpful. But in the Matrix, you can learn anything you want to learn. And once you learn how to harness the power of the brain, were there things that I could go out and really begin to empower myself with? And if they are, like in the movie, it's, he learns Kung Fu. And so I was like, okay, what is my Kung Fu? And I realized that my Kung Fu was business. And if I was going to learn that, what was my equivalent of jacking into the Matrix? So in the movie, he plugs into the Matrix, and they essentially upload into his brain all the knowledge of Kung Fu. And so in an instant, he can do it. And I realized that for me was reading. And so that's when reading really became an obsession of mine, because that was my way of taking all this amazing knowledge that people have been putting out into the world for, literally thousands of years. And it's now our opportunity to learn easily what they have learned with great difficulty, which is a quote, I think it's from Socrates, like, read so you may learn with ease what others have learned with great difficulty. And that always struck me as really, really powerful. So getting out there, reading, really asking yourself, how many skills can I acquire that have utility, and then put that utility to the test in service of something larger than yourself. And once you believe that you can do that, then how you spend your time becomes a spiritual consideration. Because it's like, what skills do I want to get? How do I want to serve the world? What is it that I want to accomplish? What's the impact that I want to have on the world? Like, those all become incredibly important questions, because you're no longer paralyzed by, well, I was born here, I don't have money, or whatever. It's like, you can go anywhere you want, do anything you want to do. You just have to acquire the skills that are going to allow you to get there. And so that became just the absolute most foundational question in my life of, what am I trying to accomplish? And then once you really believe in that radical notion that you can do anything you set your mind to, then life takes on a whole new dimension, because you could say that you're going to cure cancer. You could say that you're going to help people with their brain, that you're going to do it on a global scale, that you're going to become a best-selling author. I mean, all the things that you guys have actually done, right? Like, and that's so incredible to think, like, at the end of the day, it's not like you won some genetic lottery. You just put in the work. You became fascinated by something. You asked yourself how you could serve other people, and then you put in the work to actually do it. And that, to me, is a life well lived. That's somebody who's really come alive. But it all starts with the belief that you can learn, and then going out and putting in that work. And that's just been probably the most exciting thing in my life, is flipping my self-esteem over to being a learner, and then executing against that, actually going out and learning and discovering all these amazing people, they're writing. And then what's happening now, I mean, the fact you guys are doing this podcast, like, you can't imagine. If somebody had told me when I first found your book that one day I could watch your podcast and, like, be, even if we had never met, to be drawn into your world, to feel connected to your life, to be able to learn from you on a weekly basis, like, I'd have been like, that's not like, how would that ever be true? And so you had done the specials and things on TV, but it was like that always felt once removed, where there's such an immediacy. I could comment on your video and you might comment back. And it's just like, we're living through this extraordinary time where we can really connect with these people who've changed our lives in a way where they're actively continuing to try and change our lives. Like, it's unbelievable, but you have to plug in, you have to do something about it, you have to engage.
And,
I love that.
And all from what I guess, looking back on my life, even Tana's life, maybe yours, from people that weren't terribly special, right? I mean, I was a short kid, not very smart, until I got to college and I figured it out, and all of a sudden that changed. You struggled in
I was
school.
the special kid.
You were the special
I was in the
kid.
back of the room, like, one of those kids that couldn't read. And it was the pain. I was like, I can't take the pain of this anymore. And I just remember going and checking out the fattest book I could find. And I was in third grade. I'm like, I'm done sitting in the back of the class and sitting in the special group where they can't read.
Wow.
I was not going to move after school. I was going to sit at home till I made it through that book. And so it was the pain that, you know, propelled me forward at the time. But it was that drive of not wanting
and then
to.
someone having a fairly crazy family and cancer and all of those things now to, you know, be a best-selling author and leading a community. I mean, I'm really proud to be with her. But, you know, it's so many people think, oh, I don't have the advantages.
Or they were born, have. Right.
And the thing that kills
I was not born
people
with it.
is comparison. You know, if you compare yourself with Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or Jeff Bezos or you know, people go, well, how could I ever do that? And the fact is, all of us started somewhere, but we became passionate, and then we developed the skills, and they're all teachable if you take time to learn. So what are some of your favorite books? What are some of the books that have made the biggest difference in your life? So you talked about Making a Good Brain, great, thank you, and Mindset. What about some of the other ones that have made the biggest difference for you?
Joseph Campbell's book, The Power of Myth, really had a just transformational effect on me. And I will credit that book with, oddly enough, like contributing to my marriage in just a wonderfully powerful way. And he talked about how if you ever wanted to know what a world looks like where we have plenty of mythology, but people don't believe in the mythology anymore, look at the world around you. And he talked about divorce, and he talked about how, you know, the potency of the ritual to enter into marriage is not as potent as it used to be. There's just not the weight of it. And I thought, whoa, that's really interesting. And this was before I got married, and he had been talking about, you know, traditional coming of age rituals where people would be ritualistically scarred, or, you know, whatever the case, and say what you will, but those people knew from one day to the next that they were different. And that left a really powerful effect on me. And when I got married, I realized I wanted to be a different person the day before I got married and the day after I got married. And so as a part of my wedding, not the actual day, but very shortly thereafter, I got ritualistically scarred as a way to remind myself that I am a different human being. And it was a tattoo, but I am not a tattoo fan. So I think of it as being ritualistically scarred. And I created it myself, and it was basically my promise to my wife. And it was her name in Greek, and then the sort of 4 pillars of my belief system, I guess, towards her. So it was love, passion, commitment, and respect. And those were like the driving forces. I wanted to make sure that each and every one of those things was very real, and that this was forever. And you know, I'm very proud to say that we've been together for, my wife will tell you, almost 17 years. I'm a little less aggressive in my rounding. So a little over 16 and a half, and about to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary. So it's, you know, we've figured something out, and we got together when we were pretty young. Like, I think it's kind of crazy when I really stop and think about it. But that book just really gave me the framework with which to look at the world. And then I would be remiss not to mention Stephen King's book, The Gunslinger, which changed my life. That was the book that made me realize that I actually liked reading. Up until that point, I was convinced that I hated reading. And my dad said, look, just one more, read this book. If you read this book and you don't like it, I'll never ask you to read again. And I read it, and to this day, I remember the opening line of the book. It just so captured my imagination immediately from the word jump. And then once I realized that I loved reading, then that began my transition out of fiction and into nonfiction, where I've really accumulated a lot of skills. So those two, I think, give you a little bit of a flavor.
That's awesome. You mentioned one of my favorites, which was Man's Search for Meaning. And I have to say, Loving What Is by Byron Katie was really great. There's so many good books. So many good books. No
question.
Hugely important. Well, thank you so much for your time. What a joy. We would love to invite you to the clinic. And we got to scan Tony Robbins this past weekend. That was so much fun.
He's such a nice guy.
Very cool dude.
But we think it would be awesome for you to learn more, and anything you can do to help us spread this message, we'd be grateful for as well. Awesome. We're trying to build a community of brain warriors, people who are armed, prepared, and aware that they could make a huge difference in their lives and the lives of people they love.
Very cool. I would love that. It'd be a bit like being invited to a rock star's recording studio for me. So yeah, man, count me in. I'd love that.
Great.
So much fun, Tom. Thank you.
You're listening to the Brain
Thanks for
Warriors
having me
Way
on.
podcast. Stay with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. We have a special gift for you. It's an opportunity to win an evaluation at the Amen clinics. All you have to do is subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and rate us on iTunes.
To learn more about Amen Clinics and the work we do, go to amenclinics.com. You can also learn about our nutraceutical products at brainmdhealth.com. Thanks for listening.